Morning.
Hey, what's wrong?
It's a Tuesday in the
Monday
city.
wants his.
It's no different than Mondays.
Still better than 19 other people.
Well, and the top 10 can only be 2 people.
Yeah.
So,
Well, he was had a concert scholar, so.
You know, I need to pick a bone with you about how you run this damn place.
The hell's running this place? Not doing this show.
Hello.
Good morning.
It's so nice to be here. How are you?
Sit down, Colleen. That's her prop.
Have you recovered from Centurion?
It's intense.
Is it?
It is. It's real intense. It's good though. It's getting to see things from a different point of view. Mhm. Thanks for coming.
No worries. All
This
right.
is the way to start the week. I tell you.
Huh?
This is the right way to start the week.
Yeah, on Tuesday. I think it ought to end on Thursday. It'd solve a lot of problems.
Good morning.
I noticed that you picked the prime camera spot.
Following your lead, Mr. Mayor.
Many are called and few are chosen, Hernandez. All right, let's get on with it. Or as they say on the commercial, come at me, bro. I never did understand that, but I thought it's an interesting commercial.
I don't know. Got your attention.
Yeah, it does. Now, manatees and novelty teas, that's unusual. Watch way too much TV. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm glad somebody is.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This morning we are on the topic of customer service and communication. So we'll be running through the goals and objectives. We only cover this topic once per year. So last time we would have heard from this panel would have been last summer. We've actually added a few topics into this area. So we will roll through. I see Bo's got the objectives up there. And underneath each objective, as we have with other goal areas during KCStat, we've expanded the objectives to also include strategies, which helps us hone in the content that we're talking about and helps staff sort of know what direction to move in a more direct way. All right, measures of success as adopted by the citywide business plan. And we will cover all these in turn throughout. So first objective up is on innovative and creative ways to connect with the public while applying integrated and strategic approach to all communication efforts. So I guess, Chris, do you want to cover some of this, or would you rather have me do
You
that?
guys can do this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a sneak peek to the resident survey final data that we'll be presenting at a business session in a few weeks. Effectiveness of city communication over time. As you can see, the long-term trend is up. We had a little dip from last year. So we'll do some deeper dives into the data, trying to figure out exactly if that was isolated to a specific geography or demographic, so that Chris and his team can do some specific communication outreach to that specific group. If it's across the board, then I think we forge forward and do what we've been doing and see if we can impact that number. 1 year downturn is not the worst, but we don't want it to keep slipping. Important satisfaction with communication. We actually added this question that you see as the number one important satisfaction rated service, opportunity to engage and provide input into city decision making. And it has taken the number one spot in the communication area on the survey, so we can see that that is definitely a priority for our residents, followed by availability of information. Speaking of availability of information about city programs and services, not a statistically significant drop since last year, but you can see it hovers right around the 47-48% with a fairly high neutral, very low dissatisfaction. Yeah.
Back up.
Yes, sir.
To the importance and satisfaction chart, to the number one rank. Importance is high, satisfaction is low. What's the issue with satisfaction?
All right, I think we will dig in a little bit with,
More?
with the engagement opportunities. I think that we've sort of identified some areas where folks aren't feeling engaged with, closing that feedback loop of we ask them for stuff and they give it, and then we aren't necessarily communicating back out. So I think we're gonna talk a little bit about some efforts that have been happening.
All right.
All right, availability of information, lower dissatisfaction, so we really just need to focus on those neutrals. Looking at this by age demographics, you can see that it's sort of steady and then satisfied across the board. Younger demographic, 18 to 24, it tends to be less satisfied and more dissatisfied. So efforts toward reaching that demographic with information about the city is somewhere we should probably put effort. And kind of likewise, when you get into these 55 to maybe 65 plus, a little bit higher level of don't know. So those are people that are saying, I don't know if you're communicating with me. So maybe we can move some of those folks into satisfied if we're able to reach them. We also asked the question, how would you like to receive information? And I know this helps guide Chris and his team. Number one is the city website, has been pretty much forever, followed by the city magazine, then email, text. Channel 2 is still a preference for some folks, and then Twitter continues over time to rise in the rankings as well.
Do we have any of these broken down by age?
Yes, that'll be something we do as we dive into the data. I would say it's pretty predictable. Channel 2 is preferred by our older residents. The city website is pretty much unanimous. Most, across age groups, demographics, income, people tend to prefer that at a pretty steady rate across our demographics.
Okay.
All right, that takes us to strategy A. And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's good to be here. Again, my name is Chris Hernandez, City Communications Director. We have at the table with us several members of our communications team, including Rod Richardson, our city editor, John Hildebrand, our website manager, Colleen Doctorian, who handles about 4 different things in our office. Mark is, of course, live tweeting and will, as our social media manager, and we'll discuss those issues as we dive into those slides. And in the audience today, of course, we have our graphic design team, Jose and Karen, Lisa Chubak, who helps with our internal communications or engagement, and Mike Severo, another member of our video team. And of course, the reason you can see this on Channel 2 right now is because we have members of our video team upstairs in the control room, making sure this is going out on Channel 2 and switching the cameras. So we're going to start with, we do have a citywide strategic communications plan, and we update it annually. We created it for the first time about 3 years ago. And to show how we use an integrated strategic approach, we're going to use as a case study the Go KC projects, because it's been about a year now since the voters approved it. We move forward with the new fiscal year into actually implementing the projects. So we want to show you how we have used that strategic integrated approach across all of our communications to tell our residents what's happening with Go KC. It all starts with the branding, and as you can see, we have used it in every single piece of collateral, literature, whether video or online or print pieces across the board. We want our residents to identify with the branding, and so that when they see it, they understand that this is part of that project, the thing that they approved in April of 2017, the $800 million bond program. So again, if you go on to the next slide, we have all of these pieces that are seen even out in the field. I will show you, you can see in the middle of that slide, this is the other version of it. We have a picture of the sidewalk repairs and the ADA curb ramps. So these are going up in the community as sidewalks are identified for repair. And a lot of people are starting to notice it. We've been hearing feedback about that, and it's kind of cool to see it actually out there in action. And that sends the signal to people that their sidewalks are about to be repaired. And we know that was one of the most important projects. So we wanted to make sure those were out there in the community as well. And this integration,
Chris,
yes, sir.
Is that also spurring more and more demand, or more and more people calling, or do you know?
I don't know if more people
That
are
wouldn't
calling
be you,
311.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deanna,
That's-
Yes.
are we hearing more?
We did initially when we did the first push, because they needed to call 311 to get on the list to be
Right.
reviewed, but it has leveled off.
Okay, cool. Sorry, didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's okay.
Go on.
That's a very good question. And quite frankly, we want people to notice and to give us feedback like that, whether it's asking more about how this works or wanting to report the sidewalks. So that's absolutely part of the point of it. And the
You'll notice we did get, and you might have been on the list, we got our first complaint because a neighbor got their curbs and sidewalks done. This particular property only got the sidewalks repaired. His curb wasn't in bad enough shape, but he still wanted the curb to match. So,
I'm
no
guessing
good
we'll
deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, I'm guessing we'll continue to see that. Yeah, and we try to continue the integration, of course, with our social media as well as with the city magazine and doing articles with that as well. Speaking of the sidewalks, we did want to focus on one particular project. As you know, there's more than 20 projects on the year one list in the Go KC, but the sidewalks obviously really important to our residents. So what this slide shows is the launch event for the sidewalks. You can see how we had the signs there on the scene. The Mayor Pro Tem got the honor of pushing the button to start the concrete truck, and we also took a group picture with the workers who were there because that was a locally owned minority contracting firm that has one of the biggest contracts for the sidewalks. So they were really excited to be out there. We also had some of our bike ped advocates who came and joined us at the scene because, again, this was such a huge thing. So we wanted to make that a really big event. And we are continuing to see engagement with social media. If you look at those slides we pulled, you can see people were super excited once we made announced the launch and showed those pictures on social media. People have really been buying into it, and you can see we got really good reach and a lot of likes and comments on our social media channels as a result of that. We continue the integration with making sure we are telling people how to find more information because, as you guys have already mentioned, just seeing this out there in the community, it sometimes spurs the desire to know more. So on all of our pieces, we try to make sure that we are pushing people towards the webpage, kcmo.gov/gokc, as well as the Open Data Catalog, which has the Projects Explorer, which allows people to track the progress of these projects 24/7. You can go there, dive into the Open Data Catalog, rearrange it to your liking, see what the progress is, find out who the project manager is. So if it's in your neighborhood and you haven't heard enough about it, you can contact them directly. It has communications contact, a lot of information there for anyone who really wants to dive in for the details. And that takes us to our creatively staged events. And I'm calling it that because whenever you have a lot of construction projects, you typically see a lot of groundbreakings. And one thing we have tried to do is to make it different and creative because as the City Communications Office, we believe that we are charged with doing things creatively and innovatively. So what we have here is, as we mentioned, rather than just having a groundbreaking when we started the sidewalks, we pushed the button on the concrete truck. The KC Museum, across the top you see some other pictures there of members of the Board of Trustees who are helping with the private fundraising that is in partnership with the city spending at the museum renovations. They are signing artifacts that will be on display there at the museum. At the Turkey Creek event, which is a flood control event, we had a boot tossing rather than a groundbreaking. And Mr. Mayor, you, I think, had a little bit of fun there with that one, and Congressman Cleaver especially slam dunked his boots. The point being that since
It's
we
the
are
only
fixing,
thing he could slam dunk. Kind of old.
the point being that you can toss your boots away because we are fixing flood control, so there won't be as much flooding. So that's what we wanted to do at that event. And I'll turn it over to Rod sitting next to me to talk about the last part of this integration, which is the year one report card.
Okay. Well, when you're talking about this much money, there's probably no way you can provide too many updates. So with that in mind, we came up with an idea to put together a report card that gives a snapshot of where things stand at the end of the fiscal year. So this is our first effort at putting this together, but we think that we've designed a nice template that will give people a good idea of where things stand and where things are going. So we'll make this available to city staff and to council members so that they can present it at their upcoming district meetings. And as always, we'll make sure that a digital version will live on the website because sometimes that's where people want to go and find out what's really happening. So I'll put out a press release this week, and right after we work out one or two little more details, we should be ready to go.
Cool.
Okay, and with that, we can move on to strategy B.
All right, strategy B is about training on customer service. So Rebecca?
All right. Well, good morning. As you may know, in May 2014, the city revised and expanded the onboarding of our new hires to include 2 days of new employee orientation and a follow-up customer service training component, which has been branded public service communication. The focus of this initiative is to provide greater connection and clarification to the city's culture and expectation when serving the public and our internal partners. New employees take 2.5 days of customer service training, which includes the city's customer service promise, key concepts from AR 210 on the city's customer service standards, and a drill down into specific workplace and communication behaviors that facilitate teamwork, problem solving, and convey a sense of caring. As you can see, approximately 1,350 active employees have attended this training, which represents about 30% of our current workforce. So in order for training to stick, it needs to be treated as more than just a one-time event. In fact, a bulk of the learning occurs when the employee gets back to the workplace and starts applying the training, which is why providing opportunities for follow-up and ongoing conversations and reinforcement from supervisors and managers is key. While there's more to be done, we have taken some steps to ensure that. So we weave customer service concepts and communication techniques into our HR Management Academy, which all of our newly promoted supervisors and managers attend. In addition, the Education and Development Division administers the city's online training platform, ThinkZoom, which contains hundreds of videos on communication and customer service. And employees can access those videos anytime from anywhere to continue their development. So currently there's about almost 3,000 active employees who've logged in and used the platform. It does allow for us to take a more blended approach to learning for human resources, including our First Line Leadership Certificate Program, our Human Resources Management Academy, and our internship development training in support of AR 74. And several departments have started to use this platform to roll out some mandatory training, including our ethics refresher. The health department launched their annual HIPAA policy training through the platform back in December, and then general services on their workplace injuries line.
So on the mandatory, is that at their own pace and time frame, or is that in a set time frame in which person has to do that?
Well, we typically will roll it out. We actually spend a lot of time following up with departments to ensure that their employees get out and take that training. Ideally, we like to see them do it sooner rather than later. With the ethics refresher course, since that was the first time we had rolled out a mandatory training on that platform, it probably took us about 5 months to get people logged into the system. We would send reports to the departments usually every 2 to 3 weeks so that they could follow up with their employees.
Is this live training, or is this online?
It's online.
So, and each of these refresher courses is about how long in length?
Typically for the platform, we don't recommend more than about 30 minutes, just from a retention standpoint.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is that at some point in time, I would expect to see some racial sensitivity become part of the training course.
Okay, yeah.
And 30 minutes probably isn't going to do it.
Yeah, and we could probably take do a series of trainings along that topic, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, that moves us to strategy C, and that's back to Chris.
Sure. And you've got the slide here showing that people have choices out there. They, any news station in town, any channel of any sort will tell you that the audience has been declining. It's mostly because people are choosing other ways to find content. There are many, many more channels now than there used to be. We face that same concern. Obviously, we see people who want to watch Channel 2. We still get comments about it, so we know there is an audience, but the audience is declining. So one thing that we've tried to do. is create choices. We know that people have choices. So if you go on to the next slide, Julie, I think we want to show the traditional versus the millennial approach. Much of what we put out on a weekly basis.
Which are you?
Well, I'm about to tell you. You've got the old guy in the suit acting like he's doing the news for our weekly report. And
You
we
kind
wanted
of miss it, don't you?
Yeah, no, not really. We wanted to create a choice for people. So using Mike Severo, who's a video producer in our office, he is now hosting what we call KC in 60. It's a new way of talking about what's going on in the city. And I'll turn it over for the rest of this section to Colleen Doctorian, who, among her other duties, coordinates our video production schedule. So she'll show you what we've been up to.
This is a segment we produce specifically for the kiosks downtown, and it focuses on events and activities that the city sponsors or are at city facilities. So we produce it each month, and it premieres on the kiosk, so you can have a look at it.
Hi, Kansas City. I'm Mike Severo, and this is KC in 60. You don't have to wait until spring is sprung to get out and enjoy your city. Art Masters meet Lego Masters at the Art of the Brick at Union Station, running now through May 28th. There's no chance of stepping on any Legos here. However, proper footwear is still required. Hey, if you haven't had a chance to check out the historic Liberty Memorial Tower, you have got to try it. Take the elevator or the stairs 260 feet up for some of KC's most stunning views. It's been under recent renovations and reopens in March. Me, I think I'd rather take the elevator. Wherever you find yourself, and whatever the weather, make sure that you're registered for Alert KC notifications. Not only will you be in the know about emergency situations, you'll also get the 411 on things that are happening in your neighborhood. And if you're curious about where the tax dollars are going for the Go KC projects, do we have a video for you? So just click the link below to watch any of these stories, and we'll see you next time.
Cool.
And Mark also tweets that out every month when we produce that, so.
And we like to think of our all the videos we do as PSAs. This particular objective talks about PSAs, so we have some additional ones that we've produced recently, meaning the Compass KC, which is an informative one about what Compass KC is when it eventually debuts. The pre-registration is underway for that. We also have the disabled parking at KCI one, and we also have one about new crosswalk signals. Those are all pretty recent. Colleen, which one did we want to show here? Probably the
crosswalks.
Yeah, let's do that one.
This new crosswalk signal is called a hawk signal for high-intensity activated crosswalk. Its innovative design keeps pedestrians safer and traffic moving smoothly. For pedestrians, it works just like any other signal. Hit the button, wait for the do not walk symbol to turn into a walk symbol, and then start walking. For drivers, it's a bit different. The flashing yellow means watch out, it'll turn red soon. The solid red light means stop for pedestrians. And when the red lights flash side to side, it's like a stop sign. Each driver should stop, but if the crosswalk is clear, you can then drive through. And if the signal has no lights on, you don't have to stop. Also, each new signal has voice commands to assist the visually impaired. Wait.
So again, a fairly traditional PSA to let people know about these new crosswalks that are going in. And since it is severe weather season, we have brought back our Alert KC PSA, and this is a good one to get people on what some people know as our Nixle system, but we rebranded that as Alert KC last year. And as you can see, some of these videos have done pretty well, and there's a quick look at some of the stats on that. I think people, again, once the weather gets bad, they see that, they watch it, and they're signing up, so that's good. And I think that takes us to the end of our PSA section.
All right, that moves us into Objective 2 about resident engagement. And I believe the first bit's more resident satisfaction. So this is where we dig into that question a little bit, Mr. Mayor. So again, the trend here is fairly steady, but it has an incredibly high neutral. And so we sort of wanted to know, like, what's going on? Is that neutral across the board? Is the satisfaction different in different areas? So we first looked at it by council districts, simply because that's a natural way to look at engagement efforts for some of the things that staff do in our attempts to get out into each council district for our engagement efforts. And it looks as if we do have a higher level of satisfaction in the 3rd and 4th districts, and a little higher in the 6th, with the 1st, 2nd, and 5th having lower levels of satisfaction. Actually, dissatisfaction is fairly stable across all council districts. So in that 23 to 26% range. So not probably statistically significant variance across dissatisfied. So it looks like opportunity there is in neutral, and then 1st, 2nd, and 5th districts. Looking at it also by age group here, you can see there's really the two that stood out to me were the 45 to 54 and the 65 plus, as they are substantially lower than the other age groups. But then you also see with that 45 to 54 and the 18 to 24 some polarization there, where there's also a higher level of dissatisfaction. When we looked at other demographics, I just put them, instead of showing charts, a little bit of breakdown. When we ask across racial groups, race does not seem to have a significant impact on satisfaction. Age has some variation, as you see. Income has some variation in satisfaction, with higher levels of income being more satisfied. So, but the key takeaway on all of this is that no matter how you slice and dice it, the neutral ratings, so that would be a 3 on a 5-point scale, are really high across all of the demographics and then citywide as well. So I feel like the opportunities for improvement are to move people from that sort of 3, I don't know, area to either, well, preferably satisfied, right? We want them to have an opinion, right?
You know what would be interesting, and I don't know if you can do it by age necessarily, but I'd be interested to know how these satisfaction numbers correlate to voting percentages in the various districts, or however it's broken down, to see if there's a correlation there. I wouldn't be surprised if those who are, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some correlation.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, if you're talking about engagement, the ultimate engagement is voting. And since people don't vote, I'm not surprised that they're not satisfied about anything. So that's just me.
Yeah, that is a correlation we can do. Mark, I'd give a shout out to My Sidewalk, as I know they have that data, so we can look through that platform. All right, that takes us into strategy A, which is about promoting resident participation and increasing our engagement. All right, Charlie?
Hey, Charles Leap with the Office of Management and Budget. And to begin with, I'd like to share that we were awarded the Government Finance Officers Association's 2018 Award for Excellence in Government Finance on engaging residents in our citywide business plan. We're in the early stages of planning our 2018 update and resident work sessions. We're looking to mid to late August to early October for those.
And about those resident work sessions, we have been unhappy that at 4 different work sessions over the last few years, we only get about 100 people total. And we think we can do better. So we established a resident engagement committee with members from most city departments. There's more than 20 members. And I think it's even more than a resident engagement committee. I think it marks a paradigm shift, because in years past, we've always had departments helping other departments and divisions from other departments helping others. But we're seeing a new shift. I think the new norm is an era of collaboration. And what we're seeing with this resident engagement committee is an absolute willingness to help out others in their resident participation activities. So we're identifying best practices from other cities, we're identifying what's worked well for us, and we're sharing that information, and we're really going to use the assistance of the committee members in promoting the resident work sessions in the future.
You might look, and I think I've talked to some of you guys about, there was, Overland Park did a strategic planning process a few months ago, and they had a public meeting on updating their comprehensive plan. and they had like 700 or 800 people in attendance at this one event. It'd be interesting to know what they did from an outreach standpoint that generated that level of engagement. Obviously, different demographics in Overland Park, but I'm curious as to if there are stuff that they did that we can replicate.
Absolutely. We are going to
Yeah,
check into that.
I'm curious what they did that generated that level.
I
of
haven't heard back
participation.
from Sean Riley yet, but I do know that I kind of looked a little bit at the time frame, and I'm wondering if it was their controversy over what they're doing with Medcalf that might have driven some of that, because a lot of that was about strategic planning for the future and what the future of that whole strip should be. So, sometimes controversy does help turn that, as you well know.
You could start a rumor.
All right, strategy B.
Okay.
I think that's back to you,
Julie,
Chris.
I'm sorry, just back on Community Engagement University, I just had one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that slide.
I wanted to say, as you saw on the previous slide before that, on the public participation spectrum, the first step was inform, and so we feel like this is that step, Community Engagement University. Unfortunately, we do it twice a year because it's 8 weeks on Tuesday night, and we only reach 35 residents each session. It still fills up. I think in less than a day, we have a waiting list. So we contacted everyone on the waiting list to see if they would be interested in perhaps a daytime class. So we could do 2 8-hour days during the week, and every one of them but one said they were. So I think in the fall, we're going to try to expand that to be 2 daytime classes as well to see if we can reach more than, I guess that would be 70 residents a year. It still receives high approval in our satisfaction after they take the class. So we're going to see if we can increase that.
Maybe you ought to give them a citizen satisfaction survey as soon as they walk out of the door.
We do survey them, surprisingly. I know you found that hard to believe for our staff that we would survey after every single session on what they learned, what they would have liked to learn, how they liked the presentations, and then we do one overall. So
And the comments from that are pretty positive usually, yes.
they're always positive, as I said, except for the snacks.
Yes. Snacks are an engagement method, we've learned. right.
Good snacks are like good content, right?
Exactly.
You need
What
good,
kind of snacks you been giving them?
yeah.
Well, since the budget is $0, bag of chips.
Yeah. Okay, as we go into strategy B, this is about identifying and utilizing interactive technologies to communicate with our citizens remotely, which typically means using a virtual town hall, which we have in our other social media channels. And for these slides, I'm going to turn it over to our social media manager, Mark Van Bali, who is live tweeting this session right now.
Good morning. Talking about the social media growth, Twitter has been definitely our area where we engage most with people. It's definitely growing over time, and it's continuing to grow. And the one thing that we have a challenge with the social media is just kind of like the defragmentation, where a lot of times we have people in Facebook, the likes haven't been as much over the last year. But I attended a conference, a government social media conference. There actually is such a thing. And one of the challenges a lot of cities have found with Facebook has been that they've been kind of decreasing the reach and likes for some of the cities. And I think they're doing a lot of focus on family, friends, and the news feed, that type of thing. But we're continuing to learn from other cities and how we can increase our engagement on there. Whatever we share on Twitter, we also share on Facebook. So we're continuing to put information out there. Nextdoor has been a pretty good platform for us where we're able to target certain people in certain neighborhoods, like for different area plans, or also for if there's a road closure in a certain neighborhood. So we utilize Nextdoor quite a bit, and that helps us if we can't get as much reach with Facebook, then we utilize
Are we
Nextdoor
able
to hit.
use Nextdoor to get out information about construction activities? If we've got them, say, Water's rehabbing a sewer line or replacing a water main, or streets, Public Works is going to be doing sidewalks. I know sometimes, have we been able to kind of call that information out of the line departments and put that information out so we can kind of, all people want to know what's going on. And to me, Nextdoor would be an easy way to disseminate that information.
Yeah, we use that especially during the Warno construction. There's a lot of problems along there, and we let people know about what was going on with that, keeping them updated. So that worked out pretty well for that. Next slide, talking about KC Momentum. That's been our kind of like our virtual town hall. It was My Sidewalk, and then they changed a new platform called My Mixer, and it's given us a lot more flexibility as far as topics we can put out there and research that we can find out on what people are ideas that they have. And the one we just recently put out there, we had a lot of good ideas and recommendations on the for the MLK advisory group, and we sent those ideas over to the mayor's office for the group to consider. Another one we have out there right now is for the housing policy and how that's being formulated in public meetings. And we are getting ideas online. So this is a way for people, if they can't make it to meetings, they can come online and share their ideas. And we have other departments using it also, like planning, and they're able to utilize it as needed.
All right, we did have some resident survey data that is fairly predictable. We've seen a slight drop in satisfaction since last year, and we see the breakdown in demographic when we ask about social media. Higher levels of satisfaction, 18 to 34. That 25 to 34, I would assume, are folks who've been on these platforms for a while and are probably looking, the city is providing information through social media. So that's probably what's pushing that up as well. So. All right, next goal, to promote trust and understanding through transparency. Strategy A is about information around our performance operations, financial condition, really just all the open stuff. So first, oh, that value didn't show up, Bo. So citizens who visited the city's website is, I believe, at 56%. 62. All right, thank you. See, look, he knows his stats. Look at that. And it's remained a very steady level of satisfaction around 47, 48% for the last several years. Likewise, on the dissatisfaction side, fairly low, 13% this year.
Yeah, the bump that you see there a few years back was when we debuted the new version of the website.
Exactly.
So we got that shiny new toy satisfaction.
All right, so John, if you want.
Right. When we have an effort or something we want to put together, I need this microphone. Okay. So when we have a project or something that needs to go together, we create hubs on or subsites on the website. And two examples that we used in the last year were GoKC, which we talked about pretty extensively before. We used combined all the stuff that you need to know about KC in one place, kcmo.gov/GoKC. It's got the link to the Project Explorer. It's got the first year, now the second through fifth year projections. Everything you need to know about GoKC is at kcmo.gov/GoKC. Similarly, with the new airport terminal, we had a lot of requests for information about that. So we took what was just one page, the airport terminal group committee, and we expanded it. We put all the information we had, including a very comprehensive frequently asked questions, into new KCI, kcmo.gov/new KCI. And on election day, that site hit a peak like I had not seen for one single site in a long time, especially the FAQ. It's these things, when we put them together, they're easy to market with short URLs and stuff, easy to remember. It's very important to get all your information on one site for your residents. It's key to transparency.
Cool.
Yes, we're going to build a new website. This site we have with it was shiny new, that was 4.5 years ago. Websites generally run 5 years at best because of emerging technologies. There's new accessibility methods. There's new things. The site's just getting a little old. It needs a new refresh. We've got all kinds of information and feedback we've received from residents and stuff that we're just dying to implement. Plus, some things have gone away, like our valued Google search appliance. which we paid for, but it went away. Now we have ads on our search, which is confusing and problematic, and it contributed to this 19.21% bounce rate for when people hit the search and then they don't see what they're looking for because they see ads, they leave the site. So we've got to fix that, and we are with a new website in the next year. Next calendar year, not end of this year.
But put the, John, if you would put that 19% in context, what's really your goal? To keep
We
it
don't want
under?
we want people to find what they need to find immediately. So 0% bounce rate is the goal. We want people to find what they're looking for. And on that note, we did something last year. What we are always trying to do is educate our content contributors and staff that to think like a resident when you're using the website. You cannot assume that people know what every division is on all the departments, or even if they know what departments to look for on the website. So finance grabbed onto this. They had their divisions on that, but people don't know where to find tax, if it's in revenue or if it's in another division or something. So finance simplified their site. They created, just essentially consolidated everything into 4 pages. So now all of your forms that you need are on one page with descriptions. So we really enhanced that for searchability purposes so people can find those things a lot easier. All on one page. You don't have to guess, is it in this division, or is it in this division, or is it in this division, or this division? That creates an unhappy resident trying to find things. So we took care of that. This has been a tremendous success. We just need to keep remembering to make things easy for the resident, make things transparent, easy to find, simple.
I don't have any idea of what you're planning for the new website. I won't be here for the feedback, but one of the things that happens when I spend a lot of time with mayors is that there are always people who are demonstrating things to us, wanting us to buy their products or sign them up. But there was a website that I was somewhat impressed with, and I'm not suggesting, but I am asking about whether or not the website that you're contemplating will have similar capabilities. And basically, it was a website with a simple, what's your question box? How do I find what do I do about my earnings tax? And it leads you directly to what you want to know. You don't have to search, you just ask. We going to have that kind of capability? Because I believe it's out there.
It is. Earlier, when we were researching this version of the site, Honolulu, I believe it was a Hawaii site, had one giant search bar.
Yeah.
They tested that for a while. I don't think it's there anymore, but I have to go back and check. That would be an ideal thing to do, and it is indeed something we contemplated. Based on the feedback we've received for search, when we went to emphasize search on this site, people prefer to try and find things out there. So what we're going to do,
They prefer to try to find it, but then when they don't find it, they just leave.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've tried to find things on our website, and I haven't been able to find it, in the current site. Or if I have found it, it's been a pain in the rear to get there, so.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're definitely going to keep the investment in search so that people can find what they're looking for by just typing in a word and hopefully it comes up. Search is very important, but we're also going to implement the where do I find or something like that. So we're going to hit them from 2 avenues. We're going to make it as simple as possible for people to find things, no matter what. That would be a nice thing to do, but I'm afraid that our statistics show that that's not something we should do.
Yeah, and I think what you're really hitting on is the importance of good content, because we can take you to a page, but it better have what you're looking for, and it better be easy to understand that that is what you're looking for, because I think sometimes it might be close to what you're looking for, but if you don't understand it, if you don't see the exact thing there, then that's when people get confused or upset or angry, and
There are too many similarities.
Right.
I mean, if you're looking for one thing and you ask about something that's fairly common, then it shows up in 15 different places.
Right.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah, and that's part of the, with this example with what we did with finance, and the previous year we did it with the city planning department. Working through those issues with the departments is really setting a template for us of how to continue to do that with the rest of the departments as and we've started those discussions with the content contributors for each department because and going to a new website will be a good trigger for us to really sit down and say, okay, here's the content you have right now. Is it understandable? Can this page be rewritten? Can these 2 pages be consolidated? That's a good part of going through this process of implementing a new website.
Okay.
All right, another avenue we communicate to our residents through is the KC Moore magazine, both the print version, which is targeted at specific areas of town, and the digital copy as well. 2018 score actually dropped, a statistically significant drop there, especially since it had been steady over time. So we're going to provide Chris with some additional data on where that might be targeted. So, Chris, you want to speak a little bit about the
Actually, I'm
magazine?
going to turn over to Rod, who's city editor and in charge of the magazine, and he does a great job recreating what we're doing with the magazine.
How long have you been editor, Rod?
Of the magazine?
Yeah.
A little over a year.
Oh, so about the same time it went down.
That's one way to look at it.
Welcome to Kansas City, Missouri, Rod.
Massage that data, I think.
Yeah.
the mayor
The
that he's leaving
expectation's high, sir. They knew he was editor. It's a
It
high
was headed down
expectation.
before you got here, that's why they got you. Now it's going to bounce back
Well,
next year.
you know what? That is my goal. anyway.
There you go, all right.
No, KC Moore it's one of the tools that we use to help brand the city, and it's a good tool because it provides a nice glimpse of what's going on, behind the scenes in city government, and hopefully most residents will find it interesting and informative. Now, the survey stats indicate that the level of dissatisfaction has been fairly stable over the last 5 years, some 7 to 10%, and that's probably going to, hold steady. I think it's difficult to know why there's so many people who would say, well, I'm neutral. But having said that, I still think that's an opportunity for us to find the right chord that we can strike with those folks, because I think if we do that, then we can move that level of satisfaction to a higher spot. So the key for us going forward is going to be to continue to present good, relevant content, but we're going to have to use a variety of formats to reach people. I think folks want the content in the magazine to be consistent, but I think they're also open to receiving information in ways that they may not have considered receiving it before. For example, I don't think we've ever told a story just using photos. And I think everybody knows that a good picture is worth at least 1,000 words. So as wonderful a writer as I am, sometimes, getting Mike and Karen to just do some storytelling with images, and we'll just let it see what happens with that. So I think we'll continue to cover the city. We'll continue to be aggressive about looking for ways to be innovative with the magazine. But we'll also just, try to present ourselves in the best possible light and keep, chipping away until we get them back.
Does the neutral, is this survey also entail the have you ever read versus have you never read the magazine stuff, because there always seems to be that weird dichotomy of people who are dissatisfied never having used the service.
Right.
Which I've never understood. You'd never use it, but you're not happy with it. But I guess it shows the nature of the human condition anymore. But is there a correlation there with the read and not read in the?
So we actually don't ask that question of whether they have read the magazine or not to be able to cross-tab
I
out.
think we should,
We can-
because
yeah.
maybe that's the neutral. Maybe there are just fewer people. Maybe some of the people who would have said satisfied are now switching to another form of information collection, and they don't read it or they don't look at it or whatever. But it would be interesting to know whether or not half of the neutrals are people who've never actually even seen it.
Well, I can say my informal survey of just kind of talking with people out and about has indicated that, yes, saw it in the mail, it got here, and then that was.
I never actually opened it. Yeah. It's on the coffee table or the kitchen counter until trash day.
Yeah, I saw a friend of mine using it as a fan, and I was like, come on now. Help me out.
Maybe you ought to start putting your picture on the front and that's stop something.
Do you guys want to speak
Yeah.
to how you actually do mail the
Sure.
physical copies?
You know, we were fortunate to get some additional funding a few years ago to go back up to a twice-a-year cycle because during the recession it had gone down to a once-a-year print version, and the other time we published it was online only. So that's helpful to get it actually in more people's hands. We do target it specifically to zip codes where people have indicated via the citizen satisfaction surveys that they want to receive printed material from the city. And we also pair that up with zip codes that have high dissatisfaction rate for basic city services, because we think that information helps people, you know, where to find more city services might help with that ranking. So that's how we pick the zip codes that we send it to for each edition. We do not have funding currently to simply send it to every single household in the city.
How many do you print each run?
About 120,000.
Okay.
And we also do, as you made a really good suggestion, what'd you say, Jose, how many? 125. You made a suggestion a couple of KCStats ago, and we have continued to distribute them not only in community centers and libraries, but also hitting corner stores and grocery stores, just to make sure. And we always give a supply to your office and the city council offices to take out to district meetings and those sorts of things.
I think it would be interesting to see what would happen at the Linwood grocery store as a distribution point.
Yeah, definitely have plans to have those on hand for the grand opening week coming up.
Yeah, because there's certainly going to be a lot of people flowing in and out of that place in the immediate future, and I can't imagine that that's not a high dissatisfaction area.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, the resident satisfaction survey is not immune for its need to be open and transparent. So launching June 14th of this year will be the resident satisfaction dashboard. We will be putting the entire survey out there where we can use it as an analysis tool, but also residents can look at the survey by council district, zip code, and slice and dice it however they wish. So this has been a priority for our office for a while, and we will be calling it tentatively Kansas City Insights, and it's just going to make this data more accessible, and it's a very engaging platform where you can use it. We will actually try to start using it, or use it for KCStat, so we have a little bit more dynamic data. Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Charles again for a joint effort between our office and the budget office to also make things a little easier for transparency.
Thanks. So we are going to roll out a software called Stratex Solutions, and it's a project management tool that will help us manage our citywide business plan. It's going to help us bring the stakeholders together, and in our 2018 update, we're going to identify milestones and actions, which will be new to our plan. Stratex will allow us to continuously update the plan and also bring standardized reporting and measures to help us stay on target, and then, of course, report back at these meetings. We're hoping to roll that out over the next few months, and a fun fact is that they were a 2016 Innovation Partner Program partner and began a contract with the city in 2017.
Yes, this will be more of an internal tool for us, but it's definitely going to assist in continuity across all of the goals and objectives and strategies for the citywide business plan.
Yeah, and I will throw in there that I think that's going to help us with our scores about transparency and communicating information with the public, because if we can get a more standardized way of having the information flow from the departments that are working on these strategies to the public, because the report outs will be so similar, I think that's going to, again, help people recognize the improvements and know where to go find information.
Absolutely. All right, I will actually let Bo speak on this aspect.
Jim Giles and I just recently attended the governing conference for Equipped to Innovate in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, and we were recognized for the dynamically planned category as a high-performing city. If you go down that list of what the qualities are of high-performing cities, I think it's a testament to the citywide business plan and KCStat. It really just ticks off every point about what's going on here and what we're trying to achieve with KCStat.
All right. So we will move on to sunshine requests. And Chris, are you gonna, Rod? All right.
Oh, yeah, sunshine requests. We get a lot of those. People want to know what's going on. They have a right to get information about how we are spending the money and assigning the things that we do. And it's a really a wide range of topics that they're interested in. Three of the most, I guess, well-received topics we get are, bids and contracts. And of course, lots of people want to know about email conversations between the mayor and the city council and city manager and other folks, and making sure that, I guess, everything is transparent above board. And of course, you get your annual and semi-annual updates on salaries, and I guess that's to make sure that no one is down here being paid too much. Not to worry.
That's a big danger.
Have we thought about, I know this has always been an issue, but given that this is a chronic request, have we ever thought about just taking a snapshot once a year and just posting it out there and of salaries? It's all public data anyway. And just putting it out there on open data and saying, here it is, kids.
Yeah,
Careful
I think
what you ask for.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think what we have seen is that the problem with trying to put out one set of information like that is then everyone dives into that and then wants different things. Like, it is amazing the variety of data points that they want it broken down in. We have received media requests just in the past 3 to 4 months, probably a dozen different ways of breaking down firefighter overtime.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, we process
I'm
them.
waiting for the 15 years I've been working on that, so I'll wait for the media to figure it out.
They probably think they have.
It's everyone looks at the data and then says, that's interesting, but I want to know this, and they want it formatted differently. So that's an issue we face. But that is, one of the goals is to just get more and more things on open data where it's just there for people to see.
Isn't it already on open data?
I don't think so.
Why wouldn't it be?
I don't know.
I
Could
think
be.
that we might as well just it's always a big story, and I think sometimes if you just put it out there in its most raw form,
Yeah.
recognizing that there's always going to be the drill down.
There you go with that good deed stuff
Yeah,
again.
I know it.
And you know what happens. You know what happens with good deeds.
I think the question would be like,
Why
I'm
are
not sure
you
we have
doing this?
a tool to keep it updated the way other things are. Like, you would have to create a way of having the inputs updated constantly, because otherwise it's constantly just a snapshot in time, because people come, people go.
Yeah.
People get promotions, raises. So it would continually change. But that's the point of having open data, right?
Are they asking, well, you would think that if we have open data and it's out there, they can find it on their own and format it any way that they want, couldn't they?
That's a good question. I am the least technical person probably in this room, but I would say that we would have to create a program where every time HR makes a change to someone's salary.
I wouldn't go that far.
No.
because then I think
No.
Then I think you're updating it every 2 weeks.
Every 5 minutes.
I think you do, it could be almost
Yeah.
daily, because there's people
Right.
add and change and anniversary dates.
Just do a semi-annual?
But I think you just you pick a date and time and say, as of May 1, here it is. And then if they want something, but it's because I think we spend a lot of staff time just running down something that's like, they're entitled to it, let them. And I don't think there's anything huge to hide. It's going to be like, wow, okay.
Oh, agreed.
I don't think
yeah.
there's anything huge to hide, but I'm not sure that posting it is going to decrease your staff time. I think if anything, it might increase it, because then you're going to start getting a bunch of different types of inquiries. Whereas before, they only ask when they think they need it, and then they sit on it for a while they're trying to digest it. If you put it out there, then you know how they are. They're going to find something to pick at, some question to ask, and want something more. Why did you put this out here? What are you trying to hide? I don't know. I'm still with you on the last good deed that went punished.
And that's the trouble is, you know, I mean, I don't think they're gonna,
You can try it. Try it and see what happens.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I would not do it because
Yeah.
that's a huge amount of time, because it literally, our HR register changes daily.
Yeah.
So,
But here's the question. That's one issue, okay? What else are they asking for? Is it all about salaries? No. So you're gonna start publishing samplings of emails too? I have some that you might want.
I've seen some.
They're
of
not
these.
from me. I've intercepted them and scrubbed my name. No, you know, but what else are they looking for? And if we're going to open up on the salary side, what else is there that we could open up on similarly?
Yeah. And that is actually the point of having an open data catalog is data sets that can be made easily available to the public should be. And it's also the point of why we have an online form for you to submit a sunshine request. We don't want it to be difficult for you to ask for information from the city. So if you go to kcmo.gov/sunshine, we have an online form that you can fill out and anyone can use it and we will start processing your request.
Do we publish everything on bids and contracts already on data, open data?
I know they have a vendor payment data set. That's not the same thing.
When we're getting
That's a procurement
sunshine
question.
requests on bids and contracts, which is one of the things that you specifically enumerated, what are they looking for there?
What's the most common that you're seeing there?
Just really general, who submitted a bid, just kind of like just a roster of, okay, who all threw in on that one? And then
and usually that's other vendors.
yeah,
Curious about who was,
who they're competing with or.
And there's, what's the name of the group? The Missouri Procurement Council, I think they submit once a month, probably?
Yeah, they're just a regular
Yeah.
cycle through.
So the Missouri Procurement Council wants to get all the bid and contract information? And is that who are they? Who's the Missouri Procurement?
They have their own website and they then repost the information that we send.
Is this a vendor organization? Is this a governmental organization? Who is the Missouri Procurement Council?
I believe it's vendors. I don't think it's not a state organization.
So when you send them that information, it's public information.
Right.
So why don't you just publish it? At the same time you send it, just publish it.
We'll work with Eric Roach to set that up.
I agree. Yeah. Now, I know that one issue that I know that Eric has had, and it's been an ongoing, is a lot of this stuff is done on a PDF, and they haven't wanted that to.
Right.
That doesn't, it gums up the open data, because it's really not, it's doing a document search. But
Well, what do they want? A Word doc so that they can manipulate the?
yeah, that's, the ideal is you almost create like a
A spreadsheet.
spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's awful hard to get our data out of our various systems into a spreadsheet.
Okay.
But we ought to look at it.
Okay. What's the most unusual sunshine request you've seen?
Well, unusual. You know, having worked in journalism for 25 years, I don't know.
Just here. Just narrow it down to the time that you've been here.
Oh, somebody wanted some information about an arrest, and it was in some city I'd never heard of, but they wanted us to find it out.
What about the sump pump one?
Oh, no. Oh, no, we don't want to talk about that one.
Also, we had a rather complicated one with a lot of continued questions. Like every time we provided the information, it generated the next request, like instantaneously. And what it ended up boiling down to was that several of her neighbors had gotten new sump pumps as part of the Keep Out the Rain program, and she thought she should have gotten one too. So she was trying to figure out how everyone else got theirs, and she didn't. And quite frankly, if that had just been the original question, we could have probably
Answered the question
Yeah.
easily? Yeah. Oh, well.
But that was a fun one, if not unusual.
Sounds like a blast. Okay.
All right, so Strategy B actually is a great segue, talking about responding to frequent public information requests by providing data on open data. And so Chief Data Officer Eric Roche is out on parental leave right now, so we're trying to duct tape it together, the rest of us, since he is the expert. But his work and the work of Kim Mesa out of General Services has been instrumental in the growth of our open data portal. So as a snapshot in 2017, when we were awarded the silver designation by the What Works Cities program, the area in which we were received the most points that we could was actually in open data. Our progress, according to their standards at that time, we were at 100% of the points for that standard on open data. And it just sets the bar, really, for the work that we have done thus far. We expect that bar will probably move as open data and the field of open data continues to evolve. So we need to continue to evolve as well. And we've worked with the Sunlight Foundation on that effort. Open data sessions. This was a look at 2017 and 2018. Some modest growth over the 2 fiscal years, but it remains pretty steady around the 200,000 sessions. And I believe, Bo, correct me if I'm wrong, a session is actually is described as a point at which someone is actually engaging with the site. Yeah. The city manager referenced this. One of the things that sort of inadvertently happened over time is open data became an incredible place to store PDF documents. And in the early days of open data, that made a lot of sense. It had a unique URL that could be placed on any kind of informational bulletin we put out, so folks could find these documents very quickly. However, as the number of data sets grew and the number of PDFs grew, we got into a situation where we had thousands of PDFs that were cluttering up the system. So when someone would, much like with the website search engine, when someone would search for a particular data set, what might end up happening is they might get a screen full of PDF links, which was very unhelpful if they were actually looking for the raw data. So it was cluttering up the search. It even became frustrating for us because the same thing would happen to us when we were looking for something simple like our 301 call center requests. So Eric worked with departments and is continuing to work with departments to remove as many of those PDFs as can be removed. Like your question to Rod about some of the silliest requests we've received through Sunshine, we also found some PDFs that were literally like one sentence that had been published, and they may have been very useful at the time, but there were definitely things that needed to come off the portal. So we have been working with departments and will continue as we update content on the website to make sure that they are provided through another means. All right, this throws it back to Chris on communicating with our staff in the field.
Sure. This is a challenge that we have had for quite a while now is, a lot of our staff, they're not sitting in front of a computer. They are out doing jobs in the field, so they don't get emails from us. They don't get updates. They don't get the fountain pen. They don't have time to sit and read those at their desk while they're doing other things. So Colleen is going to talk a little bit about this next section and our successes and challenges with trying to reach folks who work out away from computers.
One of our biggest challenges, just like with residents, is a digital divide. Although all employees have now been assigned an email, a lot of the field staff who have been assigned emails don't even know they were assigned an email, nor do they have access to a computer to get that email. They're not necessarily computer literate where they can go in and know that they can access it on the city website or remember their password because they use it once a year for open enrollment. That's about the only time they use it, and that creates issues. It creates issues with this employee survey. Lisa and I spend a lot of time going out to field locations to communicate with employees to get them to fill out a paper survey. We spend lots of time at open enrollment meetings, morning, noon, and night, to recruit people for corporate challenge. It's very, very time consuming. And then this year, one of the things that happened, everyone was supposed to go online to redo their choices for their health insurance. A large chunk of people apparently didn't pay attention to that, and so that created a very urgent need for us to communicate with all the staff to go out and do that. So we posted a lot of these posters. We worked with HR liaisons. We try to work with the Fountain of Health liaisons to help us communicate to employees that they needed to go on and actually select a new insurance provider. But it's very labor intensive. Everything from like the employee day at World of Fun, Lisa and I have spent a lot of safety meetings really early in the morning. They like to meet at like 6 a.m. So we've been out very early to just inform the employees that these events are happening, because apparently they don't always pay attention to the bulletin boards, or not a lot of them have time clocks anymore, so they're not always going to a central location to get to see that information. So that's always challenging, is to actually get out in front of them. We have been now provided a new list of emails of supervisors, getting a list of supervisors who have safety meetings. 'Cause the field staff typically have safety meetings every quarter, and that's been a good point for us to go out as well as the open enrollments. But it's very time consuming.
Sorry.
So that's kind of a quick rundown on both the challenges and success, because we have moved the needle certainly on corporate challenge participation, but again, at the cost of a lot of staff work. So it's can we replicate that to reach people in these other ways? Can we find a better way of doing that? Those are things that we continue to explore.
And I would say with the last internal services survey that went out to employees, Colleen and Lisa's work was fruitful, because we did have a higher proportion of field staff take that survey. And the data that we got back is just more robust. And we obviously see in the data that field staff are less satisfied with the information they receive and the communication methods that we have. So, but we can rely on that data more because their efforts to actually get people to fill it out. All right, strategy D.
This involves a manual that we're going to be developing, that we're in the process of developing, that will help to improve intra and interdepartmental communication. And I'll tell you that this all started several years ago. I've been having the pleasure of helping various city departments develop their communication plans. And as a result of those plans, with all the ideas that come from the various departments, in concert with the information that we receive from people's experiences through the communication committee, that was an offshoot of Elevate KC, we took all that information together and came up with a fact sheet called 129 Ways to Improve Internal and External Communication for KCMO Departments, Divisions, and Sections. Well, since this was developed about 2 years ago, so many more ideas have come to the surface. So we're updating this. We're working with various city departments and coming up with larger scale and even some smaller scale projects that departments and their units can do to improve intra and interdepartmental communication. For example, some of the new activities in regard to intra-departmental communication, my own finance department, we have a Food for Thought series in which each of the different divisions of the finance department gets to meet Randy Landis, the director of finance, and Tammy Queen, the deputy director of finance, and sit down and talk about any issues that are of concern to them. Those have been so popular, we're doing it again this year for the 3rd year. And other departments are able to take some of those ideas and try them in their areas as well. You also see a lot of the external communication things that are really working. We've mentioned the resident work sessions. There's also the health department's LifeX program, which is a wonderful opportunity for people from different departments to participate together and share information. So we're going to be able to put all of this material together into a manual, and we hope to have it ready and on MyKC for everyone to look at by the end of this calendar year.
That's right.
All right, takes us to objective 4, improve the internal and external customer experience. So a little more resident satisfaction data. So this is the question we ask on customer service received from city employees. It's remained fairly steady, 48% this year, again with a pretty high neutral. When we break that out by different demographics, and we'll do more as we move forward, but we just specifically looked at age and race ethnicity for just a quick cross tabulation. Looks like by age, we have a little bit higher level of satisfaction with customer service in the 55 to 64 year old age group. So if you recall, that's that age group that also felt less communicated with. So better customer experience, want more communication. So that's sort of an interesting juxtaposition. Race, ethnicity, I would say the only ones on here that are specifically statistically significant would be white, Hispanic, Latino, and Black African American. And as you can see, Hispanic, Latino, and Black African American fall below the citywide average on level of satisfaction. Looking at 311 specifically as the sort of the front door to the customer experience for our organization. I don't know, Gina, do you have any thoughts on these? This is just the top 4 or top 5 service requests over the last few years.
And I would say, you notice trash and recycling is going up. I'm sure your office has heard as well, too. We've had some issues with one of the trash contractors. In fact, I think for the month of May, we're on track to see probably about a 35% increase in calls related to missed trash. So that is going to continue to drive volume in 311.
What are we, I don't know that I want to get into the problems. Are the problems fixable? Because I've been getting a lot of stuff.
We have tried by rebalancing. It is now almost exclusively up north where our call volume is. That is one of our providers has responsibility for the Northland. We have tried rebalancing pickup days, so we move people around trying to. He was arguing he was overwhelmed on Wednesdays, so we moved some folks to Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays to offset that. It still does not. He is claiming a labor shortage. We're all dealing with a labor issue. We're not sure what to do with that, short of probably trying to find another provider at some point, but
I got you.
that's going to be a problem.
All right.
We have seen a decrease in our calls for property violations, and I think part of that is due to our partnership with Northland Neighborhood, Inc. They are now taking over all of the Northland, so our complaints go there with them first, and they're dealing with those, and so I think that's been very successful, too.
Okay.
So when we look at the use of 311, we can see 53% of our residents say that they have contacted 311 over the last year. We're at about a 59% satisfaction rate. When you look further down and you ask about the different methods that people use, when we look at via phone, the resident satisfaction with 311 via phone, that has consistently been higher than satisfaction via the web. We also know that more people interact with 311 via the phone. I think it's still in the 70% of our requests come via the phone. Even though I think web and social media steadily grow slowly over time, I believe phone is still the most popular way to engage. With the next chart, I tried to get fancy here. So if we look at the sort of turquoise blue on the left side of the chart, that is how well your question issue was resolved via 311. So that's from the resident survey. 61% of our residents say that they are satisfied with how well their issue was resolved via 311. We also ask about the employees' perspective on 311. And so on the other side, dark blue and green bars, you see adequacy of information provided to your department in 311 service requests. So this would be a rating of that departments would give 311 on what information the call taker took from the citizen and then passed along to them. And you can see that has dramatically grown over time, and I think that's a testament to the work that 311 has done to really streamline what the call taker is getting from the resident and then being clear on passing information along. And then the knowledge 311 call takers have of your department's operations, that is also dramatically improved. And again, I think that is 311's efforts at training new call takers and making sure they understand departmental operations well enough that they can translate what the resident says into the department's language. So my hope is that the chart on the right will continue to influence the chart on the left, and we will see continued growth in that question, how well your question was resolved via 311. So, Jean-Ann, do you have any thoughts on the?
I would just say
charts?
on the internal employee satisfaction with 311, that was one of the statistics from 2015 that we were concerned about. So we tried a variety of approaches. We have a trainer that we added that makes sure that our training is consistent. We also sent 311 staff out in the field to spend time with a variety of departments. They've been out on water leaks, they've been to the tow lot, they've been to municipal court, some experiences like that as well. We also completely changed our quality assurance, our monitoring program. Previously, we had monitored just the phone calls, the recorded phone calls, which most of the agents were scoring 96% and above, but we've completely done away with that, and now we monitor the work that they do in the PeopleSoft CRM system, and then we'll look at the call that goes with that. So we're looking more at the output of their work rather than the call in, as that seemed to be where the issue was.
We also asked a question on both surveys, internal services and the resident survey, about the courtesy and professionalism of our 311 staff. And both on the external resident satisfaction and our internal satisfaction, both saw statistically significant increases from the last year. But most notably, from 2015 to 2017, our employees' satisfaction with 311's courtesy and professionalism jumped 6%. So we're now at 75% of our employees are satisfied with the professionalism of our 311 call center staff.
That's good.
And that translates into an issue, I think, that Jean-Ann can, what's your current vacancy rate now, Jean-Ann?
It's about 45%.
So as the fiscal year opens up, we find, and most of our folks in the Action Center get moved out into the departments, right?
Correct. Which I will say, I was recently at a government call center conference, and when I asked that question, if other cities or other government call centers experienced that, there was a large moan in the room, and everyone was, yes, that is consistent across the board. The call center is the entry point. It's where people come in to get their foot in the door with plans to move on. So we've been talking with Human Resources, we've talked with the city manager on a couple of ideas we've had to at least come up with some ideas to possibly retain them a little bit longer. We've also discussed some possibilities with the union. Currently, when you come on board, you only have to be with the city 6 months, and then you can move on somewhere else. Going to see if we might be able to get an exemption for like 311 to stay longer.
A year,
At least a year.
please.
And possibly some bonuses for staying on with us, because everything out of us is pretty much a promotion. So not only do they get off the phones, but they're getting a promotion and an additional salary. So we're going to see if we can at least try to address that to keep them. 2 years would be ideal. But we'll start with the one, work our way up.
Okay. Interesting. 45% seems pretty high.
Yes, we have background checks in to fill all of those positions. We sent those in the first week of May, so we should be having all of those completed any day now. And we will begin a training class. But our training's about 5 weeks long.
Okay.
All right, customer service standards.
Oh, you want me to take that one? Okay, we had the citywide customer service team a couple of years ago had worked on developing customer service standards for the city. It's now in the form of an administrative regulation. It gives everything. It defines how you should set up your voicemail messages when you're out of the office, how you should sign letters, how you should conduct a meeting. So it provides guidelines to kind of back up with what Ellen has. It's more the technical of how to do it, and she has more options to do it. So we've tried to implement those across the city. I think one of the issues departments have been how to measure how their staff are adhering to those standards. So that's one of the things we'll continue to work through. I think one of the most important was like setting up your voicemail. That's one of the things we hear in 311 is they've tried to contact someone, they're out of the office, they don't know who else, who's a backup, how do I get a hold of them, when will that person be back? So that's one we'd really like departments to start working on with their staff.
All right, and I believe, we're rolling to a close here. Second to last strategy, creating a central repository for collecting feedback about customer service.
We implemented this, compliment a city employee, City Kudos. It's online for our residents to use, but it's also on MyKC. Some of our previous recognition efforts had really not targeted our internal employees as well. So now this is one that gives every opportunity for all the employees. And for those, we monitor those, we send those out to the departments, and for those who have gone above and beyond, they get invited to lunch with the city manager on the 29th floor. So that was the first group that got to come, and I think we discussed with them ideas, and every meeting they've provided good feedback and some good ideas on what they'd like to see the city work on. So we're taking those back from those meetings as well too, and we will continue to share those in the citywide customer service team.
All right, finally, strategy C. Rebecca.
Okay, so one of the advantages of the onboarding program that I referenced earlier is that it gives us an opportunity to collect data from our new hires during new employee orientation. So we ask a series of questions as part of that program. We collect that. So our survey results from the last 3 years show that about 86% of our new hires agree that the city as a whole creates a culture of service, and 72% agree that their immediate work group creates a culture of service. That falls to 66% of our existing employees on the internal service survey. And typically we expect employees to rate their departments and work groups higher than the organization as a whole on questions like these. But in new employee orientation, our presenters and subject matter experts go to great lengths to model many of the key concepts taught in our culture of service module. And because the topic is front and center and on display, it seems to impact how people respond to those types of questions. And we want to take that same approach with our approximately 625 supervisors. As I mentioned earlier, ongoing conversations and coaching from our supervisors and managers are critical to keeping the culture alive. So while we've had some sort of customer service training for employees in place for several years, we've not provided a targeted resource for our supervisors and managers to do just that. So in fiscal year 18, we began to develop a module to address this. This session will reinforce 1B, which is reinforce learning and further refine skills. It'll also help to reinforce 4A, which is to monitor those standards. And we hope that it will help drive up participation in the City Kudos program as supervisors and managers begin to recognize the behaviors that exhibit above and beyond service. In In addition to the topics on the slide, we'll use it as an additional opportunity to distribute Ellen's manual on best practices to improve intra and interdepartmental communication outlined in 3D. We're currently in conversations as to when and how to roll out the program based off of some other citywide training initiatives, but it will likely be the end of the calendar year or shortly after the new year that we begin to roll this out.
All right, that takes us to the end of our deck. Any questions?
I'm good. Outstanding. You provided great information, as you should.
Nice work, gang. Keep it up.
Thank you. Let us know if you have any other needs. We're always happy to help.
Thanks, everybody.